Welcome to Tales from Flat Space. I'm LJ Spencer, your author and narrator. Just know that the novels in this podcast may contain content that could be disturbing to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. This is part 3, Memories, chapter 25, The Negotiator.
You should stay under the sails, Zaza, or you're going to get a sunburn,
said Stays Quiet after they finished the evening ocean rites at the temple. Are you sure you don't want to change your name? I asked, deflecting. You seem to not be as quiet as you used to be. We moved out of the way of the others who were leaving the temple. Stays Quiet turned a dark pink.
No, I'm much quieter than the others, you know that. It's just that now when I have something to say, I feel like I can actually say it and people will listen.
They stared at me for a moment. It was always disconcerting when Stays Quiet stared at me, just as it was when Water Listener stared at me, but unlike Water Listener, they seemed to know my soul much more deeply. Stays Quiet may have been much younger, but their soul seemed much older.
You've been dreaming about them again, haven't you?
I turned red and turned away from them to watch the others leave. After a long moment, I opened my mouth to answer in the negative, but then Stays Quiet twined one of their appendages with mine. They knew me all too well. I sighed and waved in the affirmative. I could feel their amusement and concern.
Come on, Zaza, let's go for a walk, they suggested. I'm on duty tonight, but sunset isn't for a while yet.
Okay, I replied. We left the temple and made our way to the beach. Temples were always situated above the beach's high water line, although with the increase in temperatures, that line was getting higher. You may have to move the temple, I said. Stays Quiet gave a non-committal wave of a tentacle.
We knew that when we got here. It's safe enough for now. We'll talk about it again in a few years, I'm sure.
And you'll probably be head priest by then, won't you? I turned pink with pride.
Maybe,
They said, then added,
and you've been avoiding my question.
what was it again?
Zaza.
We came to a small platform in the sand and sat on it. I sighed. All right, yes, I've been having those dreams again. I suppose I can't deny it, considering how sensitive you are. I turned red and looked out at the ocean. Stays Quiet didn't reply, staying as quiet as their name implied. As the time lengthened and the sun began to set, something felt different about Stays Quiet. A hush settled over the beach, and all I could hear were the waves crashing. Stays Quiet began to speak.
The season will come when the stars bring messages about others. Others who walk the stars in large metal ships. One will carry our wishes, and one will carry our lives. You will be the messenger, and I will be with you before we go to the Dark Mother. But we won't be there when the message is delivered. You will have appendages in the ocean and appendages in the stars, and there will be another who will carry the burden of our choice.
What does that mean? I asked quietly. Stays Quiet blinked and said,
I'm not quite sure, but I think part of it means that you and I will stay here, on our planet. That I could feel in my heart.
There was a rustling sound, and I could see small shadows making their way slowly down the beach. There were larger shadows by the tree line, in pairs or in larger groups. As the small shadows came closer, I saw that they were children. Some of them had large, cancerous growths sticking out of them, and some had malformed appendages, and some moved very slowly. They were all heading to the water. What's going on? I asked. I could see Stay's quiet turn darker, worry coming off of them in waves.
What's going on? Zaza, you know what's going on. You've seen this before.
No, this is wrong. They, they shouldn't have to die. We have healers and medicine. Children shouldn't die like this. Instead of trying to talk me down, Stay's quiet, strong appendage wrapped around me, holding me in place. My blood was pounding through my head, and I could barely hear anything else around me. I heard Stay's quiet say something to someone else while I struggled in her grasp. Let me go, I said, sounding much weaker than I felt.
No, Zaza.
They said gently, and they began to sing.
Dark mother, cradle these bodies in your dark embrace. Take them to the deep, where their souls will rest, until it is time for them to return. I tried to escape Stay's quiet arms, but the more I struggled, the harder they held on, and the weaker I became. I began to keen as they continued to sing the morning song, but it came out as barely a squeak. Light exploded in my head, and Stay's quiet song followed me into darkness. He's stabilizing, said a familiar voice. I wish you had accessed my data sooner. Eli could have died, you know. And now I'm not sure how much brain damage the memories have caused him. It took time to separate myself from your programming. The data was corrupted and drew all three of us in. Empathetic data is delicate. Your programming is like using a heavy object on an appendage. The implants were changed to correct for that, which is why the normal methods of data transfer won't work, and why it took over his mind and corrupted you, said another familiar voice. Unfortunately, I can't stop him from living the memories while the data finishes downloading. Otherwise, he will seize again. You will just have to be patient. But he might die in the process, the first voice said.
Nemetona, they remembered. The darkness lightened, and now there were two figures standing on the beach. One was the four-limbed Nemetona, and the other was a familiar-looking caretaker with crystal-tipped limbs. They hovered next to Nemetona without the use of a sphere. I can hear both of you, they said. Who are you?
I am the ancestor. It has taken time to understand your programming and biochemistry. It has done damage to your health, human.
Human? What's a human? They asked.
You, Eli, you're human,
said Nemetona. They tried to give a negative wave, but saw again that they had limbs like Nemetona instead of proper appendages. No, this is all wrong. I'm the negotiator. Take me back to Stay's Quiet. They must be worried sick by now.
Eli?
No, I'm the negotiator. Nemetona's features seemed to move in a negative way, and they stepped away from them. They could feel their sadness, and it struck them hard. Like when Stay's Quiet was sad. Why are you sad? They asked. Nemetona shook their head.
Because I'm losing you to these memories and I'm afraid to be alone again.
You care about this Eli that much? They asked quietly.
I love him,
Nemetona said. They turned to the caretaker. Is what they say true? They gave an affirmative wave. No, it can't be. I remember so much. I remember when I was born into the nursery pools. I remember my naming day and mentoring with the leader until I left their nursery. I. They felt something was wrong, and darkness surrounded them again. No, Eli, come back! Shouted Nemetona.
I'm sorry, Nemetona, but we must let the memories play out. It will be safer that way, said the caretaker.
But what if he never comes back to me? Nemetona asked.
He might not,
The caretaker said, as the darkness swallowed them whole. I woke in a sleeping pool that had monitors all around it. I let myself float for a moment, looking around the room. I wasn't in a pool at the healing place. It looked like a regular pod sleeping room, just with extra monitors. Daytime sunlight streamed through the high window, and there was a ramp in the pool. I tried to get out to see if there were any others in the house, but suddenly alarms went off. The shrieks startled me into curling in on myself, falling back into the pool. Someone splashed into the water and twined their appendages around me. Oh, stays quiet, my brain registered through their touch. They tried to project calm towards me, but it was tinged with fear. They were more red than pink. What's going on? I asked.
Zaza?
Stays quiet asked, surprised. Yes, what's going on? Why are there alarms on the ramp? And why am I in a different sleeping pool? Stays quiet turned nearly white with happiness and touched the comms panel.
Water listener, sky mapper, come to the negotiator's pool.
They turned back to me.
You really don't remember anything?
Remember what? The last thing I remember was you holding me at the beach when the children went to the Dark Mother and I had one of my episodes. Stays quiet went red,
Oh, Zaza.
they said before they could explain. Sky Mapper and Water Listener came in and straight into the pool,
What is it, stays quiet?
asked Sky Mapper.
They're conscious, fully aware.
Stays quiet went pink again. The other two turned pink and wrapped around me as well. I turned light red, more annoyed than really mad. Will someone please tell me what's going on before I go mad? I asked.
Zaza, you've been in a catatonic state for several decades. The alarms on the ramp are because you tended to wander off in your sleep. Sometimes you'd talk to us in a dreamlike state, but you haven't been fully conscious like you are now. Others thought we should take you to the ocean, but I knew you'd wake up again.
Explained Stays Quiet. I turned dark brown red. I'm so sorry, I began, but felt the other's joy, forgiveness, and love through our touch. How long we stayed entwined, I didn't know. But after a while, I really wanted to get out of the pool. Water Listener turned off the alarms and stayed as quiet, helped me out of the water. Sky Mapper looked at the device on one of his appendages.
I need to go. The launch is in 2 hours.
Go on, Sky Mapper. We'll take care of Negotiator, said Water Listener. Launch? I asked as they left the room.
The main crew are leaving for the ship today to get it ready for the rest of those who are planning to leave to find a new homeworld.
I've missed so much. Stays Quiet waved in the affirmative.
We can catch you up on the way.
They were interrupted by a comms chime. Stays Quiet handed me off to Water Listener and went over to the comms panel.
Yes?
Hello, this is the caretaker. I would like to see Negotiator after the launch. I see that they are conscious again, and I need to discuss some important matters with them.
How did you?
I am more connected than people think, the caretaker said. Stays Quiet turned red, but only said,
We'll bring them over after the launch.
and closed the comms. What was that about? I asked.
I don't know, said Stays Quiet, but that's the first time the caretaker has asked to see anyone other than Skymapper in years.
Oh, I said. I let them lead me to the common area of the pod as they began to fill me in on the years I'd missed. Chapter 26: The Negotiator. The pod tree that the caretaker utilized was far away from the rest of the community. I always thought it was strange that they didn't want connection with the others, since they had been maker of things before they'd become the caretaker. Then again, it had been hard for all of us to reconcile what maker of things had done. For myself, this was the first time I had been to see the caretaker since they had changed. I'm not sure why I avoided them, except that maybe I didn't want to be reminded of who they had once been, especially since Maker of Things had been close to me since we were out of the nursery pools. Stays Quiet came with me, just in case I had another episode, but I was able to slowly make my way to the tree without incident. When we got to the entrance, I said to them, I can make it the rest of the way, Stays Quiet.
Are you sure, Zaza?
I waved in the affirmative.
All right. I'll wait out here then,
They said, and made themselves comfortable near one of the roots. I patted one of their appendages and went inside. The tunnel was long and wound around below the base of the tree into the ground. As I made my way into their sanctum, I could see wires and shining components in the walls, as if the tree and the ground around it had become part computer. I was confused as to why the caretaker would embed technology in the roots and ground, but I didn't know anything about how they worked. I knew it had to do with machines and computers and data, but other than that, it was just as unfathomable to me as SkyMapper's star charts. I reached an opening in the tunnel and emerged into a room filled with switches and screens built into the roots and soil around it. The caretaker was out of their usual sphere, using a floating platform instead. Their crystal legs were connected to components on the roots, and lights blinked like stars, while the screens gave the room a dim glow. I gasped at the sight of it, though I wasn't sure if it was in awe or horror.
Negotiator, thank you for coming to see me, they said. It has been a long time.
Well, yes, I know, I said, not sure what else to say. The caretaker disengaged itself from the computer and turned towards me. I am truly sorry, Negotiator. I had to create this body and put Maker of Things' mind in it. In order to ensure that our people would survive, I should have warned you about what I was going to do all those years ago. I... I started to say that it was all right, but it wasn't. It wasn't all right about anything anymore. The catatonia, the strange dreams, the ship being built, and people deciding who was going and who was staying became too much. Yes, you should have told me. I'm warned, Maker of Things. You're not them. You're some computer object that still looks like the person I loved. And now what? You apologize to me like what happened didn't hurt me at all? The caretaker moved away from my anger, turning a dark red that was reflected in the crystal limbs. I am still Maker of Things in many ways, Negotiator. I have all of their memories, their feelings. The way I have encoded the data accounts for emotions as well as facts. I couldn't just make myself like the computers we use for writing or music or trade. It would have been an insult not to include the richness of our whole beings. Our memories wouldn't make sense to the children on the new planet if I didn't include the empathetic data. They paused, curling in on themselves slightly. I was surprised by the movement. They continued.
I, or rather maker of things, dreamt of the design of the computer components one night while I was lying in the pod tree. They could see how the circuits and components, both organic and metallic, fit together. Then, as you know, they worked for many years building what you see before you now. But when the leader wouldn't listen to you, they knew they had to act. They knew they were going to transfer to this form eventually, but they thought that by showing everyone what the future could be, they could change their minds. They transferred their consciousness into this vessel, and the rest you witnessed. How can I believe you? How do I know you're telling the truth? They moved within range of me again. Touch me, negotiator, above the crystals. I slowly moved one of my appendages closer to them and gently touched the more skin-like section of their body. After a moment, I felt emotions coming through that touch. Fear, determination, sadness, and grief. The emotions weren't like touching other people, though. They had a tang to them as if swallowing ocean water, leaving a metallic taste in my mouth that I couldn't explain. My eyes opened wide and I jerked my appendage away. You did it. Somehow you did transfer the emotions. They waved in the affirmative. Yes, negotiator, and in a few weeks, I will be installing myself on the ship in orbit to control it, and SkyMapper will be going with me, as they have mapped several new planets for us to study to see if we can call one of them home. Others will leave too. They paused. It will be difficult for you when we leave. What do you mean? I need you to stay and become the caretaker for this world. You want me to. You can't be serious. They didn't reply. But why? I thought I'd be going with you. They waved in the negative. I saw it, both in my data and in my dreams from the Dark Mother. Some of us need to stay behind in caretaker form to witness what will happen to us and to pass on the data when the others come. I curled in some of my appendages, turning dark red. So you're a priest now? Having visions? Stays quiet said you wouldn't believe me. They sighed. What? I have been talking to them since you weren't coherent enough to talk to. Or, to be more precise, they sought me out to understand why I had done this and why we had come to this island. They have some of my genetic material in them and understand much more than I do about many things. They won't talk about it, but they see much more from the Dark Mother than they let on. Eli, you need to wake up, the now familiar voice said in my mind. Please wake up. I clutched my head in my hand as I left the caretaker's room. I moved as fast as my body would allow, not really looking where I was going. I heard voices yelling after me, but I ignored their cries. Get out of my head! I'm the negotiator! Stop calling me that! I said to the voice. No, you're Eli, and you need to come back to yourself. No! I yelled out loud. Suddenly I was falling into the ocean, the cold water stunning me out of my flight. The water was dark, and instead of fighting the waves, I let them pull me under. Better to let me. Better to let myself go to the ocean than become one of those things, I thought. I wouldn't be me anymore, and if I put myself into that machine, I wouldn't have to watch our people die. Strong appendages wrapped around me and pulled me out of the water. I struggled in their grip, but they held fast and wouldn't let go until we both fell onto the beach. It was only then that I realized it was Stays Quiet who was holding me.
Through our connection, I gasped as they spoke directly to my mind.
The Dark Mother isn't through with you yet, Zaza. We have our purpose.
How do you know? How can you be so sure? I said out loud.
Because the Dark Mother told me so,
They said. And in my mind, they added.
Share with me, Zaza.
Where they were was dark and cold, but the spheres let them navigate the ocean, then come together in communion when they returned from their investigations. The numbers of land dwellers dwindled as the radiation from the dying star became greater. It wouldn't be too long before the sun finally destroyed their planet. But from space, machines came. Machines that were familiar but strangely flat in its data. Machines that carried strange limbed people. They learned to communicate with them and send messages back. In their spheres, they discussed the communications and made plans for the day they would need to share their data. The negotiator then became the messenger. The vision faded and I lay limp in Stay's Quiet's appendages, marveling at the power they had. Their acceptance of this vision in me was total.
Zaza, you won't be alone. I've already decided that I'm staying with you. You've been my parent and my closest friend for so long. You were the only one who believed in me and loved me from the beginning without judgment. Trust in my vision, Zaza. I will be with you through this. I won't leave you. I need you, and you need me. I love you, Zaza.
I felt others around us as we stayed there holding each other tight. I was tired of facing the end of the world. I didn't want to think anymore about where our planet was heading, or about the ship in space, or about how powerful Stay's Quiet's vision was. All I wanted was to be comforted and held. Stay's Quiet did just that, until the rest of the people around us faded away and the day started to cool into night. Chapter 27: The Negotiator. The island that once held our community had returned to more of its natural state in the hundreds of cycles since the others left. My sphere floated above the deserted gardens and pools as I ran radiation testing and took soil samples to bring back to the caretaker pod. The last of our land dwellers had passed to the Dark Mother a long time ago, and in the recent few decades we witnessed the last of the people of our planet go to the ocean. Stay's Quiet had taken to going to each island in turn, witnessing the dead and bringing those who couldn't make the journey to their final rest. Somehow, when it came to going to the ocean, the people didn't mind Stay's Quiet's caretaker form. I learned about and continued Sky Mapper's work with the others. We studied the air and soil and monitored the sun's deterioration from the satellites that Maker of Things had left in orbit for us. In the last years before they left, I insisted on calling them Maker of Things since we were all going to become caretakers. Maker of Things only laughed and didn't contradict me. Maker of Things still cared about us, Negotiator. I think they were humoring us, said the four-armed being who moved with me in my vision as I walked along the beach. Yes, well, they were old when they left, I replied. The four-armed being crouched down to look at the sand of the beach. This is different than I remember, they said. You remember something? I asked. Just a fleeting memory. The island is much greener than the pictures in my memory. The sun is brighter. Do you still not remember who you are? They moved their head back and forth, which I learned was their version of a negative wave. It reminded me of when they first appeared after I was transferred to the caretaker body. I fell asleep and woke up to see that I had the crystal limbs of a caretaker and a four-limbed being in my vision that only I could see. Being a caretaker was strange enough, since I still felt like myself, except for that all my emotions had a metallic taste to them. like when I first touched Maker of Things after I woke up from the catatonia. The first thing it said to me was, "Who am I?" I didn't know, and told them so. I couldn't tell exactly what they were feeling, but if I read their movement right, they were sad and confused. Since then, however, they had become a fixture in my daily life. The other four-armed being called Nemetona hadn't been back since the time I left Maker of Things pod tree when Maker Things said I should become a caretaker. This new person just seemed confused and alone. I hadn't told anyone else about their presence. "You're thinking about Maker of Things?" they asked. I waved in the affirmative. "Among other things. It's been a long time since we received any messages from the ship. I suppose they're too far away now. Even Sky Tracker says that by now they were so far away that it would take more than 1,000 sun cycles for the message to get here. It's already been 1,000 cycles since they left." I sighed. "I still miss them." "I know you do," they acknowledged as I continued my measurements.
Zaza,
Stays quiet asked through the communications channel. "Yes," I answered.
we are receiving data from the satellites. There's a strange ship in orbit. Their spaceship is much more primitive than our technology, though.
I looked at the other being, whose eye hairs rose. I guess that meant they were surprised. So was I. "Can we communicate with it?"
I think so. Storyteller says they could analyze their language if we can get a probe to download the data from the ship.
"Yes, do so. I'll be back shortly," I said. After packing all the samples in the case I had with me, I formed my navigation sphere. The four-limbed being disappeared as I began my descent into the dark waters. "It looks as if they are analyzing the system so far," said Sky Tracker. "They've sent satellites around the planet. I don't know if they've analyzed the sun's instability yet. I wonder if they, too, are looking for a new planet for their people." The large communal sphere held all six of us who had become caretakers. Except for Stays Quiet, all of us had been old and ready for the ocean when we transferred ourselves to the caretaker bodies. Sky Tracker had been SkyMapper's mentor and still analyzed the sun along with any other space phenomena. The other three had been people I didn't know well when they became caretakers, but now we were all as close as any established pod would have been. Shines Bright had been a renowned artist and sculptor. Talk Straight had been a leader of their own island of people, but their pod was asked to leave because they believed SkyMapper a maker of things. Now they catalogued our history with Shines Bright. The last of us was Tree Talker, who had been a pod builder and tree specialist, but now took the samples we gathered from the surface and studied the effects of the radiation in addition to helping Sky Tracker. Stays Quiet went pink, then red in contemplation. I may have been the leader of our group, but it was Stays Quiet that held us together. They still received visions from the Dark Mother, which I found strange since they weren't an organic being anymore. The four-limbed being suggested in the beginning that it was because we still had organic parts.
It's them.
Stays Quiet finally exclaimed, turning bright pink.
It's who?
Asked Shines Bright.
The others. The ones who will take our data to the ship when it's time.
Stays Quiet stared far away again, then said,
We need to learn more about them.
Sky Tracker gestured noncommittally. "Well, we have several probes in orbit. I could task one with downloading their data and communicating with them." Stays Quiet looked at me with a fierceness I had never seen before. I blinked, but their determination was still there. "Send the probe." Sky Tracker sent the commands to the probes in orbit. It took time for the data to come back to us, but what came back was as extensive as it was interesting. There were mathematical models, some sort of writing, even audio and video. I opened one of the pieces of video data before I even thought about it. I gasped. It was another four-limbed person saying something. but there was no emotional component to the data. What are they saying? I asked.
I don't know, said Shines Bright, but it seems like their data coding is much simpler than what we use. More mathematical, really, but I think if we work together, we can translate it.
Stays Quiet waved in the affirmative to me. The four-limbed person in my mind was strangely quiet. I thought, though, that if we translated this, then maybe we could figure out who they were. I waved in the affirmative to the others. Let's do it. After many hours of work, we were able to hear the first words from an alien being. Personal log. UT. Crap, I don't remember. There's a damn timestamp on these logs anyway. Captain Nigel Evans. We found a possible planet for colonization. We sent satellites around it to do some initial analysis. It looks, so far, like a water world with mostly islands, the largest about as big as Australia on Earth. Beth says it has tropical vegetation. We'll get more data in the morning. Since it's our first night here, we'll just take it easy and wait for the probes to do the work. Nigel Evans? Asked the four-limbed being in my peripheral vision. Why does that sound familiar? I ignored their comment. We have to warn them away, I said. Stays Quiet turned dark red.
But Zaza, they're the others. We can't. We need more time to study these people,
Talk Straight said.
We don't even know if they have a way to carry our data in any form.
Shines Bright waved in the affirmative. Turned dark red. But we can't just ignore them. What if the sun flares while they're here? We know of your existence now. Please leave our system. We will let you know if we wish to contact you again, said the four-limbed person in my mind as if they were reciting something from memory. I stared at the place where they were in my vision. What they said was exactly what I had been thinking. I blinked and said to Sky Tracker, yes, let's study them. We can always ask them to come back when we're done. Let's see if they will leave if we ask them to and only come back when we're ready, I said. Stays Quiet stared at me for a moment, then said,
That sounds reasonable. We have time.
I entered the message into the computer. Send this message, I ordered Sky Tracker. We waited. After several minutes, a message came back. We understand and will do as you ask. We will ensure that your system will be left alone. If you are agreeable, we will leave a small satellite at the edge of the system that will act as a warning beacon and will also be checked on a regular basis if you decide to contact us in the future. I waved in the affirmative, as did the others, and Sky Tracker sent agreement. We watched our own readouts as the beings, or humans as they called themselves in their data, removed their satellites from around our planet and started to make their journey out of the system. Sky Tracker sighed in relief. Good, they said. I would hate to think what would happen to them if the sun decided to flare while they were in orbit. The four-limbed being was staring at where the video log had been. I know what I am now, they said. I am a human. Startled, I left the common sphere and floated mine just outside. I looked at the four-limbed being. You know, I think you're right. You look similar to the being in the video. Not the same. Like, no two of our people are the same. I stared at them for a long moment. So, you're a human, but why have you been in my head all these years? I don't know why I'm in your head, or why I can only remember bits and pieces of human memories. Something's not right here. Yes, something is very wrong, I agreed, as I floated, watching the others going through the data from the humans. Anger bubbled up in me, and I wanted to strike out at this human that had caused me trouble for so long. But I knew that they weren't real. so I went back up to the surface to finish collecting samples instead. I've checked the data 100 times, negotiator. The sun will go nova within the next sun cycle. We need to send the message now, insisted Sky Tracker. Stays Quiet was next to them and waved in agreement. Are we sure that a human mind can handle our data? I asked. It had been several hundred turns since we had told the humans to leave our system. The human in my vision shrugged. They had learned about their people along with me and the others, so they didn't know either.
It has the right setup for empathetic data,
Said Tree Talker.
similar to our own minds from the scientific data that we downloaded from their ship. We'd need to separate the flat data from the empathetic data, though, and we'll need to modify the humans slightly. If they have another one of those ships with them, then that could hold the flat data. I've gone over everything, leader. Sky Tracker is right. We're running out of time.
I sighed and curled my appendages a little, turned on my navigation sphere, and left the common one. I knew this day would come, the time when we would die along with our son. I think things will be all right, negotiator, the human said. We had long ago started to refer to ourselves as different beings, even though they shared my memories. These humans may be volatile, but they hold history dear like you do. Actually, maybe even more so. I waved in the affirmative. I wonder if they're capable of getting the data to make her of things. I think they might be, they said. Before I could ask the human why they thought that way, Stays Quiet came out to meet me. Their sphere merged with mine.
Zaza, you know it's time, don't you?
I I hesitated and turned dark red. Stays Quiet touched me, and I could feel their sense of conviction and determination.
I know it's time. The Dark Mother's blessing is on this, and it's finally our time to go to the ocean, Zaza.
I stared at Stays Quiet for a long time, contemplating my remaining child. The human had disappeared again. I finally waved in the affirmative. Then we both went to tell Sky Tracker to send the message. Sky Tracker moved around the common sphere as if they were a child first learning how to swim fast. We need an interface for them to talk to in order to understand us, they said. What do you mean? I asked. They need a flat data presence to ask their questions about our people. They need a caretaker they can take with them. They have similar beings to caretakers, and I can make a close enough version of one so that it works with their systems. I wish we had the same time and ability to test it better. Sky Tracker curled their appendages a bit in frustration. The thing is that we've just run out of time. I hope they reply soon.
It's only been 2 moon cycles since we sent the message, Sky Tracker,
Said Shines Bright.
They may not be in the area of our solar system right now.
I know, but the sun. We only have a few more weeks, maybe 2 moon cycles. Sky Tracker turned dark red brown. We all stared at Sky Tracker. They turned even darker brown. The data came in this morning. The deterioration is accelerating. All right. I took a breath. All right. If we don't hear from them in the next few days, then we'll launch a probe with the flat data and put one of our fastest ship drives on it. It would be enough to let the others know what happened to us. Everyone waved in the affirmative and got to work. Now it was just a matter of time. Sky Tracker monitored the ship's trajectory as it came down through what was left of the atmosphere. We waited just below the surface of the ocean as the sun's radiation had become toxic, even for us. We had said our goodbyes earlier, knowing that we would expend ourselves just trying to send our history to the last of our people. The human watched with me, but had said nothing since we had sent the coordinates to the ship in orbit. "They've landed," said Sky Tracker. After a few minutes, the ship settled and a four-limbed being came out of the ship. "I remember this," said the human. "They're trying to walk toward the ocean," Sky Tracker said. "Please wait near your spacecraft," I sent to them, and then signaled the others to come with me. The human in my mind followed us to the shore. "Agree to communication?" I asked when I got close enough to touch them. "Yes," answered the human in the suit. The others gathered around me, all touching the human as I reached out with my crystal appendages. "My God, that's," said the human in my head. The world around us broke like glass and went bright white. Part 4, Recovery, Chapter 28, Kia.
I'm not getting any response from Nemetona,
said Loki.
nor are we getting any response from the ancestor ship,
"Just be careful, Loki,"
warned JD.
"Holy shit," gasped Carol as she entered the bridge. "What the hell happened to her?" "The caretaker data is what happened to her," snarled JD. "It nearly killed me, if you remember." Ebo put a hand on JD's shoulder. Carol looked at Ebo, who shook his head. Carol swallowed what she was going to say and just replied, "Right." She moved over to Jack, who was talking to Loki. "What do we do now, Captain?" she asked. "I don't know," Jack said, staring at the screen, sounding shocked. "Loki, what's wrong?" I asked him directly.
She's not responding to me, but the channel is open. It's as if her consciousness is elsewhere, he replied.
"I see," I said out loud. Everyone turned to look at me. "I'll go over to Nemetona." "But Mama," Jack started.
Creator,
Loki said at the same time. "I am not an old woman anymore, children." "But what if your avatar body gets damaged or your programming gets trapped with them?" asked JD, sounding anxious. I smiled. "I appreciate your worry, young man, but I doubt that it will. Besides, Loki can always make another version of me. He still has my original Elder program. I am not a god, friends, but I am quite a capable computer scientist." JD blinked at being called young, and Ebo tried hard not to laugh.
but she's damaged, exclaimed Loki. What if she does something to you?
Your programming runs away with you." "I have dealt with damaged AIs before, Loki," I said quietly, but firmly. The room went quiet for a moment. Then Jack said, resigned, "You're right, Mama Kia. When do you want to go?" "Send me now, directly into the core," I said.
Are you sure?
Loki asked. "Do I need to repeat myself, Loki?"
No, Creator,
he said, and suddenly I was in Nemetona's core. I thanked the fact that I had an avatar body that I didn't need to adjust to microgravity and immediately went to the emergency part on the core. I closed my eyes, stuck my hand into the port, and my consciousness connected with the sphere. I opened my eyes again. My programming had interpreted Nemetona's core as a large, flat plane, perfectly straight and infinite. I moved myself forward, commanding myself to find the corruption in Nemetona's programming. In the distance, spikes appeared, similar to the ones that were sticking out of her ship's hull. It looked like a strange forest with a large gray spike in the center. The others around it were various shades of red. They looked menacing, as if they could attack at any moment. I willed myself over to the gray spike.
When I arrived, the red spikes seemed to respond to my presence by flailing towards me, but when I didn't do anything more, they returned to a dormant state. Right, static analysis first, I said to myself. I formed an analysis box between my hands, which became a translucent cube that glowed slightly. I threw the box at the gray spike. It grew larger, spun around the spike, throwing out bits of itself until it was back to the same size as when I threw it. I held up my hand, and the box floated back to me. Yes, I think I see what the problem is, I muttered to myself as I studied the data in the cube. Okay, now, model checking. I saved the data from the analysis in my own consciousness, and then transformed the cube into something that looked like a bore gauge on a stick, with a large red button. I stuck it in the plane in front of the spike and pushed the button. It proceeded to probe the gray spike, and each time it did, the surface of the spike rippled, sending red waves throughout the surface. The device moved itself around the bottom of the spike, probing the surface, causing more ripples until the spike turned a dark grayish red, and the device chimed. I brought up a window and studied the data. Aha! I found it. I dismissed the screen and the device. I studied my hand for a moment. Then the world bent around it slightly. Putting my hand to the spike, a doorway opened and I walked through. The room was full of color and shape, as I floated in a sea of mathematics and physics that no human could ever conceive of. It was beautiful, and it felt like it breathed in multiple dimensions. My programming couldn't comprehend it much past the fourth or fifth dimension. I stared at it in appreciation and awe. Oh, Allah, so that's how it's done. I'm in a hyperbolic manifold. No wonder they don't have the flat space problem. Amazing. It was then that I saw the anomaly. A tangle of programming that kept Nemetona from being able to come back to herself. The knot was tied to the ancestor ship and Eli's bots. In fact, Nemetona was wrapped so tightly into Eli's bot architecture that it was difficult to discern between Eli's mind and Nemetona's core. The only connection that looked anything like this was Loki and Jax. Damn, I'll need to go to the ancestor ship, I sighed and disconnected from Nemetona. I came back to my avatar with a rush and pulled my hand out of the debug port. Loki? Yes, creator? I'm sending you some design specs. I need you to fabricate it and send it over as soon as it's ready. Fabricating now, creator. Should be done in 3 minutes. I waited patiently, then plugged the device into the port as soon as Loki picketed it over. There. Okay, Loki, bring me back. He brought me back to the bridge, where the others were still waiting for me. So? Asked JD. I found the problem that's keeping them locked together with the ancestor. I can't separate them from Nemetona's ship. The device I created for the core should work as an anchor to allow her to come back to her own mind. To complete this, however, I need to talk to the ancestor ship. I need their help to break the loop that the other two are in. I don't want you to go over there alone, creator, said Loki. I'll go, volunteered Carol. I'm the only logical choice, really. Jack can't go, and Ebo probably shouldn't. Ebo stared at her for a moment, then shrugged, stepping a little closer to JD. That would work. You'll need your suit, though. I can't guarantee that the air will be breathable, even if Eli's in there, I said. Also, we don't know how much his mind has been changed, or if he'll wake up at all. I stared at her, hoping she'd understand what I meant. She stared back for a moment, then nodded. Right? Give me a bit to go get my suit and grab a medkit. I nodded, and Carol left the bridge. The rest of us stared in silence at each other, lost in our thoughts as we waited for her to return. You have been listening to Tales from Flat Space. If you want to support me and my writing, there are several ways to do it.
Share this podcast, find me on Twitch, or subscribe to my website, ljspencer.ie. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.